had a coach. She's very wise. She said, you know, Greg, most law firms die from indigestion, not starvation.
Well, it goes back to your initial premise. Get your niche.
Yep.
Stay in your lane.
Yep.
Focus. Don't get bored.
It's called discipline. It's what I lack in my actual real life, okay? The Bible. There's exactly two kinds of stories. Be like this, successful, or cautionary tale.
Yeah. You run a multi-million-dollar law firm, 8 figures. What has been some of the best decisions you'd say you've made to help propel you guys forward? Are there a couple of them that?
Oh yeah, I would tell you that
yeah.
Nothing in my background prepared me to run a business the size of the business that I have.
Yeah.
So I think selecting coaches and selecting peers is the most important thing you can possibly do.
What is the most common, if there is one, or a couple, mistakes you see new attorneys making?
Oh, well, I made them all myself. So this is, I'm a wizard at answering this question. So the biggest mistake is,
All right, we have a guest on the podcast from New Jersey, an attorney, very successful attorney, and we're here in Dallas, Texas, and we're hearing his story. Mr. Greg, our MC this morning,
Yes.
Brian Hogan, another attorney.
Yeah, Greg and I met, man, it's been over a year, right?
yeah, I think so.
And Greg's part of the organization we're all part of, C12, right? Christian-based businessmen hanging out together, doing life, and there's a conference here in Dallas. So love to have you, Greg. So glad to have you with us today.
Yeah, it's fun to meet up. Thanks for asking me to get up at 5 in the morning to go run with you. The last time I ran, this is not an exaggeration, I did the New York City Marathon, I think in 2013.
Okay.
And that's when I hung up my running shoes. And I said, you know what? You know what? Maybe God is telling you, Greg Lewis, you're a walker.
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
That's when I became a walker.
Right. Well, well deserved then. This is a good stake in the ground. Now you get to keep on the momentum. When did you join C12? How did that come about? What's the story on how you decided to hang around and learn from other businessmen?
I joined C12 because an advisor I was working with, her name is Cammie, became a C12 chair. So she had been working with us in an organization called Atticus, which only works with attorneys. And she said, Greg, I'm moving on from Atticus. I'm joining C12. It's an amazing organization. And so she said, you should check it out.
Okay.
And I said, okay, I'll give it a shot. And I think she was kind of realizing too, where my business was and where my values were, that it would be a good match. And so it's honestly one of the best pieces of advice I ever got, getting the opportunity to go sit in on a meeting and see what it was all about. I was like pretty much instantly said, I'm signing up for this. This is where I need to be.
That's great.
Yeah.
How big a group did you have in New Jersey at the time? A bunch of established businesses there?
Yeah, we were at the time probably the small fry in that group that I joined.
What year was
the chair? 2020.
Okay.
So I've been in C12 about 4.5 years at this point. But the chair had 2 groups, and he was in the process of building a second group. So when I joined that second group, there were about half the people were new. So that was kind of nice.
Got it.
There were some other sort of freshmen who were new to be initiated together.
Right. You have one of what I would perceive one of the largest firms in New Jersey. How many attorneys do you have?
So this morning we have 58 attorneys. We also only do one kind of law, which is a little bit unique.
Yeah, sure.
So, we are pretty focused. And I don't know if I know we're probably the top 30.
Okay,
in New
gotcha.
Jersey. Yeah.
Gotcha. Big footprint. And you're also, what other states are you part of?
New York, so we're predominantly New York. We have offices in New York and New Jersey, and about 90% of our work is in New York, and about 10% of it is in New Jersey. So I live in New Jersey. I grew up in New Jersey. I told you my wife's a Jersey girl.
Yes, right.
We're never going to get out of Jersey because she never wants to leave Jersey.
Yeah.
My kids love Jersey. My kids love the Jersey Shore. So, you know, we're kind of Jersey people, but actually most of our business is in New York.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Take the train in and
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No,
how much staff do you have? You got about 58 attorneys. What's the probably total footprint you have?
our total employment right now is about 140 people. Yeah.
And what size were you in 2020 when you jumped in with?
Less than half. So, you know, we've definitely more than doubled in size since I joined C12. And I think I joined C12 at the perfect time too, because it was kind of making the transition from just running like a chaotic startup. Because when I joined C12, we were only been in business for 4 years.
Okay.
Okay, so, you know, I was just kind of like figuring things out and kind of, you know, at that point, our revenue was probably in the $7 to $8 million range. And I was starting to take it seriously. Like, okay, this is a real business. This is going to stick around. You know, this is, I got to figure out how to run this thing and run it well. And I owe that to people. So when I joined C12, it was sort of at the moment where I was also, hey, I need some help and I need some advice. And, you know, I think that's one of the things you get out of C12. I mean, there's a great curriculum, but there's great wisdom at that table.
Right.
So
how much different is it from Atticus? What's the difference in Atticus?
Well, Atticus is not value-based. Okay. You know, it's obviously it's not faith-based. Atticus is just kind of straight coaching. And, you know, that's useful. Like, it is useful to be around colleagues and peers. And, you know, I'm a defense attorney, and defense attorneys, we're not as collegial as UPI guys are.
Yes,
I mean, we're just not. And like, when you go, for example,
you guys are all trying to take each other's business.
That's right. Everybody's trying to eat everybody else's lunch.
Yeah.
Everybody has this sort of fixed pie concept of like, for me to grow, Brian's firm has to die. I got to take his clients. I got to take his people.
Yep.
And, you know, my competitors in this space, I mean, they take my people. That's what they've been going after my people. They go after your clients, and it's constant. And there isn't a sense of, I can't even say camaraderie, just like civility towards each other.
Sure.
You think about us in court all day, you know, we're always oppositional to each other. Yeah. But, you know, we're polite, we're civil. I'm not here trying to take apart your business. Right. On the defense bar is completely opposite. It's not it's not as collegial. And, you know, I've gone to PI firm or PI conferences and stuff. Yeah. And everybody's sharing there, here's my SEO ideas, here's how I get business, you know, all those things. Right. Defense guys are not sharing leads. They're not helping each other build their businesses. So, you know, that's why Atticus is useful for me, to get some good advice.
Oh, good. Because Atticus, you can get other attorneys and really build some relationships.
Get some other perspective. But, but again, it's not faith-based. It's not spiritually based. You know, it's not not focused on talking about purpose or mission or ministry. It's just got absolutely none of that sort of focus, which I think is missing. I don't think you have a complete business unless you're thinking of those things, and unless there is a sense of, hey, what's the bigger picture here? What are we here to do? And you know, that's that kind of biblical perspective. I don't know where else you would get that besides C12. I just don't know where that would fit.
Let's talk about Christian-based law firms.
Yeah, that's a lonely world.
Yeah, right.
You and I know that.
Yeah. What's that been like for you? Is it something you apply in your hiring practice, team building, your culture, your vision, your mission? Or is it something you sort of keep to the side and don't really talk about much?
Well, I'm careful about it, to be very frank with you.
Yeah, sure.
So, you know, obviously I'm Christian. I grew up Christian. Yeah. Raising my children Christian. Right. But I have to be thoughtful about also being as inclusive as I possibly can be. Of course. You know, there's a battle for talent out there, and I have to be careful about, you know, exactly how I express that. And so, no, we don't have any specific hiring practices around that at all. Right. But we do start people off from day one saying, hey, here's what's different about us. Yeah. Here's what we are. We're a values-based organization. I always say that over and over again. Yeah. And I talk about our 4 values, which again, that's one of those things that C12 helped me formulate and say like, hey, how are you going to do this? Yeah. But then, you know, at every onboarding, I say, hey, we've got these values, but really we're a Galatians 5:14 workplace. This is a golden rule, right? That is the law that is above all others. You know, take care of each other, treat someone the way you'd want to be treated. That's internally how we're organized. We say those words out loud, but internally, no. And in fact, I could tell you just from running a business, we did bring in chaplaincy into the business, and to be frank with you, it did make some people feel uncomfortable.
Sure.
So, we sort of faded that to the background a little bit, sunsetted that. But, from my perspective, it has always been trying to build something greater, something that's going to exceed what we're doing. And, if we can glorify God by doing that, hey, that's great. That's a benefit.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I'm kind of meandering
No,
here.
no, you nailed it.
But I mean,
no,
you sort
exactly.
of asked like, hey, do you have any specific Christian hiring practices? And
No, exactly. No, just faith-based.
We're cautious about that.
Right. I just wondered if as a faith-based firm, or someone just value-based, that's really a quality answer. That's what it's about. Right?
Well, I would tell you this. I think no matter what business you've found, or it's sometimes a reaction to where you've been before.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense at all.
Of course.
And I did feel, so you said, what's it like being a Christian law firm owner? Okay, coming from the Northeast, coming from a so very competitive place, competitive landscape. What I felt the places I had worked out before were missing was not reputation, was not skill. They certainly had those things.
Yeah.
But a sense of shared values. What's the there that's there?
Sure.
Why? What's the why? Sometimes a law firm can feel like somebody just went out and rounded up all the stray dogs in town.
Yeah.
And tied them together to a sled and said, this is our dog sled team, right? And there's no there that holds people together.
Right.
So, when I founded Lois Law Firm, whether this is biblical mindset or not, I say, like, we've got to be about something more. There has to be some values that tie us all together, right?
Yeah,
And so I think, C12 sort of helped clarify that for me. I can tell you before I joined C12, I didn't talk about mission, vision, values. I just said, hey, do it like Greg says to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was very seat of the pants.
Yeah.
So that's, that's a little bit of that. I think when we form these businesses, it's sometimes a reaction to what you've been exposed to. And, certainly my experience was like, I want to make something very different than where I had worked before and where, what I'd been exposed to as a young attorney.
Yeah. Given your size and where you guys are going, your clients that you're representing, I know we've talked and you've said how growth continues to be something just that naturally occurs when you're in demand.
Yes.
You're hiring a couple attorneys
a month,
right?
Yeah.
What are let's talk about that for a moment. But what is the most common, if there is one or a couple, mistakes you see new attorneys making?
Oh, I made them all myself. So I'm a wizard at answering this question. So the biggest mistake is, there's a couple of them that I made, and I'm sure other young attorneys are going to make these same mistakes. First mistake I would say is, when I was a baby attorney, everyone told me, don't get a niche. Don't specialize, Greg.
Right.
You want to be a generalist, don't go do general civil litigation. And that was like really bad advice.
Yeah.
And, ultimately my practice is a very niche practice. It's a very specialized, very small practice. And so I would tell a young attorney today, hey, don't be afraid of specializing. Don't be afraid of picking a direction. As long as the market's big enough, you're going to be in good shape. And as long as, you could dominate that little market or that niche. So those are things that I would say.
That's good.
That's an obvious one. Another one is, I hire a bunch of attorneys a month, and I think some of the younger attorneys, new attorneys, they're driven by their student loans.
Yeah, sure.
And they're just saying, I just got to maximize my income, maybe not maximize my experience, maximize my learning potential here.
Yeah.
And so sometimes in our recruiting process, we've got to slow down and explain to someone like, hey, in the first few years that we're going to hire you, we're going to put a couple hundred hours of CLE and a couple hundred hours of training into you. Yeah. And that's valuable,
Right.
And if you want to just do like document discovery all day in the back room somewhere, and make a little more money, maybe, that's the trade-off that I think it's tough. I think, I remember graduating law school. Now, I'm lucky I didn't graduate law school with any debt because I worked these terrible jobs while I was in law school.
Did you? Okay.
Yeah. But I think a lot of people get driven by this. I need to recoup this investment as fast as I can.
Sure.
And, I want to tell them like, hey, but think about the long term,
Yeah.
your first job, that's your training ground, and whatever skills you can pick up there, that's going to be your skill set 5-10 years from now. So be thoughtful,
Yeah.
about that. So, we try to counsel. I mean, obviously recruiting interviews are not counseling sessions, but I do try to explain to people like, hey, you should really think about not this next quarter, but like where you're going to be, 6 quarters, 8 quarters.
So good.
It's tough. It's a tough thing to do. So I think, the younger generation, new attorney coming out, I was the same way. I looked around my friends. I'm like, I've just been wasting away in law school for 3 years.
Right.
You guys have all bought BMWs. You've got girlfriends. You're moving into apartments, and I'm just the idiot loser.
Yes.
Who's been putting himself through school.
Sure.
I've just felt like my life.
I'm 3-4 years behind.
Yeah, I'm behind the curve.
Absolutely.
I've fallen behind my cohort. I don't like this.
Right.
So, I get that.
Yeah.
But, look, I think if you're a lawyer, you went to law school, you passed those tests, you're very clever, obviously. You can pass the test. You can experience some more delayed gratification.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, I mean, that's what you're demonstrating already. So, hopefully that's compelling,
Yeah. For those guys going, hey, at what point did you get into law school? How young were you? I mean, excuse me, what year was that you were in law school?
So I started law school in '98. I took a year between college and law school. I worked as a staff accountant.
Okay. And where did you come out of college at?
St. Mary's College in Maryland.
Okay.
Then I went to Rutgers for law school.
Okay.
And, I'll just say this about my alma mater. It was the only one I applied to because tuition was very efficient.
Right.
And I was like, I'm not going, too deep into debt for something. I don't know if it's, I knew I hated being an accountant. I knew that.
Right.
I didn't know if law was the
Gonna be the niche, but
yeah.
And law schools, those guys looking into getting to law school and working his way through. Did you get married in law school? Did you meet your wife?
And then my last year of law school, I met my wife. And this is a terrible story, but I tell it all the time. I met her, it was in the summertime, and I told her, I'm like, listen, you're my summer girlfriend. At the end of the summer, we're breaking up. So just so you know.
Yeah, sure.
That was 23 years ago, and we've been married for 22 years. So,
Oh, that's so great.
I didn't
Like, holy cow, I
stick
found
to my
someone-
plan.
Yeah, right. But she was worth every penny, right? Every minute. The law school experience. What's it like? Law school, Rutgers. What do guys someone look at whenever they're stepping into law school?
I mean, I think it's a commitment that you have to be really mindful of. So in my practice right now, we have more than 50 paraprofessionals. The number one source of paraprofessional attrition is, I'm going to law school. Right? Because, so I think that's one thing I would say, like, hey, before you decide to go to law school, maybe come out of college, maybe spend a year working at a law firm. Maybe get a job as a paralegal, law clerk, something like that. See if this is something you really want to do. Get a sense of what it really is. And unfortunately, it is our biggest single source of attrition for paraprofessionals. They're going to law school. The flip side of that is, I've got a bunch of attorneys that work for me now. That started as paraprofessionals, went to law school.
Oh, that's great.
And now have come back as attorneys. So that's
you probably helped dozens of the
so that's worked out. But I think that's one thing I would be thoughtful about. Like, I was glad actually that I took that year between college and law school, and worked as a staff accountant for a year, crunching Excel spreadsheets back then. I was like, I can't do this. This is not for me. This is not going to be a healthy sort of place. And that was like my push. So, just be thoughtful about what the motivations are. If the motivations are, hey, I like the TV show Suits, and I think it's going to be like that. Maybe for an eighth of 1% of the top 10%, maybe it is, like that. But for most lawyers, this is a work a day. This is a highly accountable job. It is not an easy job. You are responsible. And I mean, in my practice, I mean, we're responsible down to the minute for what we're doing. This is not a, fool around, mañana sort of career choice. So you be thoughtful about those things. So those would be some piece of advice. And then, law school, I would just tell you, I don't care where you go, it's tough. It's a grind. I mean, it's a grind. It's a grind. So are you going to be able to do it? Are you going to make that commitment to completing, that grind?
What were the jobs you had when you were in law school?
I had some of the worst jobs you could possibly have. So one job was I was a diving instructor at a local country club and a lifeguard. Okay, so I did that.
Right.
I also I worked in a restaurant as a sommelier, helping people select wines.
Look at that. Yeah.
And then the third job I had, which was the longest running job, which I loved the job, but it was a tough job, was I worked in a very busy bicycle store, assembling bikes and working as a bicycle mechanic. So
look at that.
that was actually the worst paying of all the jobs,
Yeah.
but the job I liked the most.
Right.
And you know, I like riding bikes and it's fun, but you know, when you're in the basement of the bike shop assembling kids' bikes,
Yeah.
3 weeks before Christmas,
Get out
just
of here.
cranking out,
Yeah.
you know,
And then getting ready to go to
16-inch
class.
bikes all day,
Yeah.
all day. Yeah, but you know, I like anything mindless, to be honest with you. So it was nice to have mindless jobs
Right.
during law school. Where you just, you know, they're just turning a wrench, you know,
Yeah.
shaking people's hands with grime all over it and fixing bikes because
Sure.
it gets you out. At least I wasn't thinking about case law, you know,
Right.
at the time. But you know, hey, if you're busy, you know, first year of law school I really didn't work, but second and third years I did.
Okay.
First year of law school, I
Yeah.
tell people don't. Like
No, exactly. Right.
that's the only year
Same.
that counts. And you know, you
Yeah.
want to do good your first.
Yeah, you got to get that
First
good
year.
foot in the door.
Yeah.
Put your foot down and really work on the classroom.
But I didn't really like law school, and I
Yeah.
don't know if I trust anybody who says they loved it. I mean, I tried to.
Sure.
My background was in accounting, so I participated in the federal income tax clinic at Rutgers.
Okay.
I got credit for that. I'm like, I already know the accounting. Like, this is easy.
Yeah, sure.
Just to try to get through it. You know, at the end of the day, it's funny. None of our clients have ever asked me, where did you go to law school? What was your GPA? You know?
Yeah.
Don't ask those things. Just assume, all right, you know what you're doing.
Yeah, right,
You've
absolutely.
demonstrated competency. So,
Yeah.
so I don't know if I would get
Yeah.
so hung up as well about where you go to law school. I mean, I've got a little bit of everything in my practice,
Yeah.
from, you know, tier 1 law schools all the way down to, you know, local yokel law schools that have maybe one, I know, has
Sure.
lost its accreditation, right?
Sure.
There was one in Florida that did. So wouldn't tell you even that, you know, trial or litigation practice like we have,
Right.
that any one credential is going to make you more or less successful. It's really about character, really more than, you know, the degree to me. So
Yeah. So
yeah,
good.
I wouldn't get hung up on the names.
Yeah. How would you say, let's say you run an 8-figure law firm.
Yeah.
How would you say AI has impacted the law practice and what you're doing?
All right. So this will probably shock you, but we don't allow any in the practice AI. Zero. We don't think it's ready yet. We don't own it. We think there's some cybersecurity issues
Okay.
with even the promptings being discoverable. So we're leaving it alone for now. My clients, some of whom are the biggest carriers and companies in the world, are just now starting to issue guidelines to us about the use of AI in our defense practice.
Everyone hold up
Literally
for the
just
guys.
started to get guidelines about that.
Okay.
But on the
So
operational
AI.
side of the house,
Yeah.
right? So like coming up with pay and compensation models, scheduling things, AI all day. But segregated, completely segregated from the practice system.
That wasn't an answer I was expecting.
Yeah. So I,
You run a multi-million-dollar law firm, 8 figures. What has been some of the best decisions you'd say you've made to help propel you guys forward? Are there a couple of them that?
oh yeah, I would
Have-
tell you that
Yeah.
nothing in my background prepared me to run a business the size of the business that I have.
Yeah.
So I think selecting coaches and selecting peers is the most important thing you can possibly do.
Yeah. It's really good.
You know, I use my C12 group as an outside advisory group. I do. I mean, when I present my core business presentation, which I did last month, you know, I brought my executive director of ops to it. I mean, she's the person that runs IT, runs client relations, the billing invoice side. She runs the HR department. But she came to my core business presentation. I presented, here's what I think the company's all about.
Yeah.
And then she listened to the feedback from the 12 at my table.
Right.
And, you know, she has great takeaways from it that maybe it's things that I would have missed, right? So
Really good.
I would just tell you that it's really not. I mean, people like to think about the sexy side of any business, you know, the sales
Yeah.
side, the marketing side.
The New York, New Jersey
you know,
firms and
collecting all the money. That seems like fun, right?
lifestyle, the suits, like you were saying, you know.
Yeah,
out
but
west
the
or
reality of it is like at the end of the day, like how are you leading these people? What's your experience? I mean, I didn't run a 20 million plus business, before I started this business. I have no experience.
Right.
You know, where are you going to get that advice from? And that's, you know, to me, one of the great things about, you know, C12 for me.
Yeah.
And being around people. I mean, there's people at my C12 table that have businesses that are like orders of magnitude larger than mine.
Is that right?
I mean, you know.
What are some of the industries in your C12 group?
So we have everything from your commercial services. We have a major manufacturer and retailer that is vertically integrated, both manufacturing and retailing, with tens of thousands of employees. I mean, I got a crazy table where I've always been the small fry at my table.
Wow.
Compared to the other people around it. And also in terms of establishment of their business. You know, my business is 9 years old, and we're probably by far the youngest business that's in that group. So, you know, that's the choosing your advisors and peers. You know, that's super key.
Yeah.
I'm definitely someone who's like, I try to be coachable.
Yeah.
And you try to surround yourself with good people.
Sure.
And then, you know, using that C12 group effectively.
You've been a part, you know, you got 50 plus attorneys, you got adding 2 or 3 a month now. People behind the scenes don't know what really happens with attorneys. So let's talk a little bit about what are some of the unsexy habits, if we want to call it unsexy, some of the things that it takes to really scale up and to be a quality attorney that are going on a daily basis.
That's a great question. So just to reframe your question a little bit.
Yeah.
Like
Morning.
What does a successful attorney look like?
Yeah.
Is that it?
Yes.
But from the perspective of like, what do the people on the operational side of the house not understand about them?
Yeah.
All right, that's a great one. I mean, look, we're very thoughtful. So in our firm, every attorney is paired with a paraprofessional, one-to-one.
Yeah.
So we're very thoughtful about that relationship. So, and it's a tough one sometimes for attorneys to navigate. You know, you've got yourself through law school. You know, maybe you're ambitious, you're a bit of an opportunist. You think you're more clever than everyone else, you're smarter than everyone else, right?
Sure.
You're a very clever attorney. But now you got to work with someone else and, you know, and treat them respectfully. So, you know, you got these
They're
type
carrying
A,
a big weight of your practice,
right?
right?
And they're helping you, you know, and on the one hand, so every attorney that works with us is a trial attorney. Everybody goes to trial, and that's a specific breed of attorney, right? I mean, generally speaking, they're sometimes, you know, they're most motivated and they want to be successful, but are they always the most tactful people? Are they always, you know, the best colleagues to be collaborating with, right? Because they want those wins.
Yeah.
They want to feel like they're doing this thing. So that's a fine thing to sort of balance. But I would tell you, you know, the emotional intelligence of the individual attorney, you know, that makes a big difference in, you know, how successful they're ultimately going to be. And I always say, like, hey, you're paraprofessional. That's like your mech suit that you're wearing around. Like, this is the person who's going to like amplify you, and they're going to build you up. Yeah. So, you know, building that relationship and spending the time with your paraprofessional, you know, how do you look at your cases? What are your strategies and tactics? Because, you know, the time you spend in the beginning with them, teaching them, is going to pay off down the road. And again, that's a, you know, future time orientation is maybe not, you know, everybody's strongest skill set right now in the age of TikTok. Yeah. But like, that's an important thing. And I've been a lawyer for 23 years. In that time, I've had 4 paraprofessionals. 3 of them still work for me.
Oh, that's great.
You know, so these can be
value those relationships.
Great longitudinal relationships. You know, so you know, I always encourage attorneys like, hey, this is going to be your best friend, your right-hand man, and you might have a multi-decade collaboration with this person. You know, put the effort into that relationship. Don't treat them transactionally or opportunistically or shallow. So, and that's another thing I would also say is, you know, successful attorneys should recognize where they are. You know, my firm's not competitive internally. You don't need to, incentivization is not about who can bring in the most work. We're not here to eat each other's lunch. We're trying to build a collaborative workplace. Know where you are. You know, you're in a place that's, you know, we're very process oriented, we're team oriented, we're building little cells of teams throughout the firm on purpose. So this isn't the place to try to throw people under the bus, you know, to try to get ahead by stepping over someone. Not useful, you know, at our company. Right. You know, the partners in my firm, we incentivize them to hold office hours and do case roundtables. And we incentivize people to go to them by giving them billing credit, because we want them to work together. We want to, use that force amplifier effect of, getting all of that wisdom. So, that's know where you are. I mean, if you, hey, look, I started off in a super hyper competitive law firm where every September they hired in a big class of associates, and next September my wife would look at me and go like, where did all those people go? And I'm like, I don't know, we got a new group now. Like every year it was like they knew they were going to wash out 90% of people.
Sure.
This place is not like that. So recognize like those skills that maybe would have gotten you to the top over there, not super useful here. So I guess what I'm saying is it's relational. It's it's relatedness. I think that is something that we try to get people focused on early.
Cool. Really good.
Yeah.
Good. Firm, just under 10 years old. You've had enormous growth, success. Of course, there's going to come some challenges.
Yeah.
What are a couple of the, I wouldn't call them failures, but let's say things that maybe haven't worked? What's the toughest part of the growth, and what are a couple things you'd say that this was some of the biggest challenges, and I overcame them with XYZ?
We've had terrific failures. I think it's probably the best questions are always like, what are the things you wouldn't do again? What are the things you wish you didn't do? Right. And I've got a huge laundry list of those things, like huge. So we're focused on serving employers. That's what we do. Right. But you know what? Ships drift off course. Greg Lewis lost his way many a time. And at one point I was like, what would be a good bolt-on practice is we should do some subrogation, some associated recovery work.
Gotcha.
So
tried to sideline.
Started to sideline it, and I said what I could do is I could take an associate and train them up, and then we could do a little subrogation, we could do a little first party defense on the civil side. So I thought that was a good idea. We also started defending long-short cases, which it's so close. It's like in the same wheelhouse. Actually,
right.
The
you got trial attorneys. Let's just learn the.
I got a pile of them over here, and here we go. And then even within the main practice, I said, okay, we're gonna have one group here that serves self-insureds, right? Because that's about half our business. And then we're gonna have one group over here that serves carriers. It's about the other half of my business. And we're gonna treat these client types a little bit differently, and we're gonna. What a terrible idea. I mean, what I ended up doing was creating disunity, distraction, really wasted. I wasted years on this idea of sort of niching within the niche. And it was a bad plan. So I would tell you, if I could go back in time, the one decision I would have undone was back in 2019 when I started saying, hey, look, we had some success. And I started saying, hey, there's some sort of bolt-on things, and I kept justifying it to myself by saying, hey, if I do this other thing, if I had some subrogation and recovery service, if I do long-term, well, I'm just keeping my clients in the bucket. They don't have to go outside of my bucket to go look to somebody else. Right. I'm building a better moat around my client base. I can serve them more efficiently. And in some cases, the clients were asking me to do it. Sure. Hey, could you take these on? Could you do this? So I say, I'll do it. And it ended up,
I could scale this. Maybe.
And the truth is, with the right people, and the right amount of time, maybe, but it distracted me away from the thing that was actually important and was actually working. And so I would tell you, it was a profound mistake, a profound overreach. I had a coach. She's very wise. She said, Greg, most law firms die from indigestion, not starvation. Okay, they try to put too much on their plate, try to shove too many things through their pipeline, and that's what they die of. And I'm like, man, that was wise. And I wish I had paid attention to that advice before I started going on what I call the adventures. And then
we call them the lady in the red dress.
Lady in the red dress, man.
Money to catch over here. I'm gonna go catch that money. Oh, there's money in the longshoreman. I'm gonna go catch that money.
Yep. And then
it goes back to your initial premise. Get your niche. Stay in your lane. Focus. Don't get bored.
It's called discipline. It's what I lack in my actual real life. Okay, that's the thing that's missing. Okay? I know what to do.
All of us
just don't always do it. I feel like that's why there's such a great self-help industry. We all want to be slaves to our own great ideas. But we can't actually do it. So I would tell you that's the biggest mistake. And it goes back to what I said earlier, which is, specialization is a super skill. Like if you can. You can dominate some niche, like do that. And it's tempting, particularly when you're successful, to say, well, I'm this genius, I could figure this out, I will figure that out. And
Yeah.
it ended up, being very problematic, because yes, I had to let people go. I had to then restructure the business. I feel bad because I was trying to push people into things that they were maybe not personally committed to or not excited about, because I was excited about it.
Yeah.
And
the team needs you. Let's do this.
Hey, you're bright. I'm going to train you to do this, and then you're going to do this. And what a failure for the rest of the firm to see your leader off on this adventure.
Yeah.
And pouring all his time and attention into these other ventures. I mean, they must have felt abandoned, and they must have felt kind of like, why is he validating this? It's not even successful. And here I am, kicking my own butt to try to serve these clients better. So big mistake.
Set you back a little bit, timeline.
I lost years to that, really. And then the fixing that time. So when you do have to either spin off a practice, because I had to spin off a whole practice. I had to identify firms that could take on that work. And then I had to transition all that work to them. And then, I'm still responsible. So I'm trying to do that. What a complete waste of time. So and that's what's precious. So.
Appreciate that humility, brother.
Yeah. Well, I got lots more there. I don't know how long this podcast goes for, but it could go on for days.
Yeah, you got to take a step back sometimes to take that step forward, right? And go, okay, we got a little off track here.
I think that's what any growing business feels like, right? 2 steps forward, 1 step back.
Right.
I guess Mike Sharrow was talking about the J curve.
Oh man.
Oh, and I'm wearing his
J same here.
Bracelet,
got it blue. Got my blue on.
I get that, man.
So good. Oh man, I thought about it. J curves we're on right now. Like, okay, let's see. This area, this lane's going really well, but let's give it a shot. See if we can expand, explore some opportunities. I got discipline. It's so well said. Multi-millionaire, $1 million law firm, out there making it happen. What are some of the things that you look back on and go, if I lost it all today, but this is important to me.
Yeah.
And number 2, could you build it all back up again?
Yeah, I mean, that's essentially, well, I'll answer the second part first. Okay. So second part of your question was really, you lost it all. Could you do it over? And, and so let's start with the would you. Absolutely. I think it's meaningful. I think we do touch people's lives. I think we are making a difference. I do care. I am committed. I do have a vision for what I want to create. So all of those things, I would, right? Now, could you? The answer is, we're finding that out, because I have had some missteps. I did overextend myself, and I did get into these practice areas where right now, my firm just has come out of our big restructure. We are just in the process of implementing some new functions and some new staff into the firm. So, we're in that process right now of sort of rebirth. And I'll tell you that, the 10th year is going to be very different. And we're doing some stuff now that I would never have imagined doing 10 years ago, at the different scale, different scope. So we're starting over as we speak right now.
Oh, that's great. I mean, to me, that's exciting.
Yeah, so
because you've been there and you're like, okay, good. I know when you can see, I lost my way and the finish line, I couldn't even see it anymore. There is no light at the end of the tunnel. Right. And then to go, wait, we found ourselves again and we're back on track. Right. That's exciting.
Yeah. And then you also said, hey, if you were starting over, like, what would you?
Yeah.
Well, it's a different world. I mean, when I think about when we started this company,
fresh eyes,
9 years ago, right? I mean, I was leasing space. I was rolling out computers and stuff. But nowadays, that stuff's so easy. That's so simple.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the problems how long have you been in business?
Yeah, 27 years.
Okay, so the problems you had to solve back then are so dramatically different. And stuff's so much easier now, like reaching an audience, talking to your market, recruiting. It's all completely different than it was 9 years ago. So I feel like, it's a completely different problem set than, we were confronted with.
Yeah.
Starting over today, if I was, hey, I'm entrepreneurial, I'm an attorney, I would be focusing entirely on personal reputation and audience. That's entirely what I'd be focusing on. I wouldn't be worrying about building a business. I wouldn't be worrying about
what's that look like?
The infrastructure. I would be saying become domain dominant. Absolutely. Be the, not one of the attorneys who does this.
Yeah.
Be the attorney who does this thing, who is the. That's what you would want to get to. So, you know, thought leadership, you know, a different tempo, a higher pace of talking to the audience, you know, addressing that market. If you notice, my market is very clear. It's very obvious what my market is. You're a Fortune 100 company. You have more than 100,000 employees. That's my demo. That's what I go after, right? So I know that, you know, the things that I did 20 years ago to get name recognition, to be the for those people, those are the things I would focus on. All the other parts of the business that were so hard for, you know, for you 27 years ago and me 9 years ago, like a computer system. I mean, now these cloud systems, it's $29 a month per user. You don't even think about it, right? Like, this stuff has been so solved. All the stuff that was hard back in the day. Hey, the first law firm I worked at, we had a full-time librarian, right?
Yeah, dude, I hadn't thought about that library since that time. Holy cow, great.
You know what I mean?
Me back now.
We had a full-time librarian. And you know, if we didn't have the book in our library, she would go down to the law firm that was on the 5th floor and borrow it from their library. You know, like, think about that startup. How do you compete with that? Nowadays, the barrier is so easy, but what people don't have is that domain dominance, that, you know, that technical proficiency beyond everyone else, and how to demonstrate that. So that's what I would focus on. And, you know, if I wasn't spending all my time running a business, I would be doing stuff like this. I would be talking about, hey, why are we interested in this? And, you know, what are the parts of it that are unique or interesting or different? That's what attracts. You know, that's the part. And
man, that's good advice. Because there's cross. I might do stuff on the plaintiff side and you're doing defense, but that tracks. If I can get my niche and stay in that lane and become the guy who does X, Y, Z, that's really good. Great advice. Is law, let's ask this one. You get to see, experienced a lot in your years of practice. Is law still a good business?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
I agree.
So I think it's going to get better too.
And why? What makes you?
So I do think that AI is going to take away the chores. You know, we've been tinkering around with how is it going to make. I care about. See, what I think about AI is I think job design. I think job design. I want to make my jobs, you know, meaningful, sticky, fun, even if that's possible.
Sure.
And you know what's not fun? Prepping for a trial, having to go through 10,000 pages of medical records, figuring out, you know, finding the 2 or 3 smoking guns in there.
Yes.
AI can do that stuff in minutes. I mean, the chores, the homework that it's going to absorb, I think are going to make the practice of law more fun. I think, I think, you know, the efficiencies, we're all going to find them. It's going to be, it's going to be market clearing. There's not going to be anybody who's like, I'm not worried about, hey, is the world's biggest law firm going to be better at AI than us? Nope.
Yeah.
I think AI is just the market leveler. It's like the internet. Like, everybody has access to the internet.
Yeah.
Just because you have a bigger law firm than me doesn't mean that you have better internet. I mean,
yes, correct.
Right? So we're all going to have the same inference models.
Yeah.
Some people will have maybe different data that they run their model against, but, you know, essentially the tech is going to be, it's going to be there. So I think the big gain is going to be for the individual attorneys, paraprofessionals, in terms of job design. And that's what we're thinking about when we think about AI. Like, can I make their job better?
Yeah.
You know, more fun? Can I get rid of the routine, the mechanical?
Right.
And, you know,
and the practice of law is just going to continue to grow and
and then like
be leaner, maybe, you know, you could,
Well, look, at the end of the day, what it's going to support and prize is creativity and advocacy. Those are the 2 things that, you know, I think AI is going to help amplify. But if you're a creative attorney, you know, you're always looking for that, you know, in my business, we're always looking for that little hair that's sticking out of your sweater that I can pull at. I can tug at the one vulnerability in your case and make your whole case fall apart. That's my goal, right? That's like a Matlock, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, like, that's what we're trying to do. And, you know, can it help us get to that place where attorneys are using their noodles? You know, we're not just cranking out contract language and settlement documents. You know, we're getting into the meat and potatoes of what we should be doing. We should be thinking. I mean, people are paying us for our judgment. Yeah. Not just because we can read fast. I mean, that's not that was an important skill. I don't think reading fast and reading comprehension is going to be important a year or 2 from now once AI is more better integrated. So, you know, I would say job design is the number one thing. And then you can offer people a healthier job. it's more meaningful,
Right.
and they, creativity is maybe more important than just how much case law do you remember,
Yeah.
right? That's
Sure.
that's a game changer.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so we're trying to get our workforce kind of ready for that. We're talking about that. But I think that's still a little down the road, and I do think there's still some hurdles to get past before we fully deploy it.
Yeah, exciting. I love the concept of having a profession, right?
Yeah.
I encouraged it with my kids. I don't know how you look at it with your kids. Is law something you'll encourage your kids to be a part of?
Yeah, I think it's great. I think it's like a backdoor into anything you really want to do.
Yeah.
Now my son, he's 11. I said, hey, we're talking about colleges with my older daughters. And he's like, Dad, I'd rather be earning than learning. He's like, I don't want to go to college. I'm like, okay, I get it. Like, you're tired. It's mid-school year. We don't want to think about this stuff yet.
Right.
But I do try to bring my kids to work as much as I can.
Fantastic.
Right? And even like just little things like, hey, we do a big Halloween party. I'm like, hey, you're going to help us decorate and take the decorations. And I was like, a law firm could be fun. Like, this could be a great play. Like,
Dad's business, right?
Yeah, right. So like, all those types of things. And, we encourage everybody to bring their kids. I mean, we have a Halloween party to bring all the kids in, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So we are trying to inculcate them in this idea of, a profession is safe. Nobody can ever take away your education. I don't care what happens. It's yours. So, definitely invest in it. But yeah, I mean, I would love to see it become something that goes on after I'm done, and then maybe something they can participate in.
Sure.
I found it certainly be meaningful.
Right. Let's talk a little bit, the grind. I have all these images of the work it takes to do defense work, which I began with 3 years defense.
Oh, did you?
Yep.
You're a refugee from my side
yeah,
of the
absolutely.
fence.
Did comp defense to start off with.
Oh,
So
okay.
have the hand in that jar in Florida, and then went out to do the plaintiff side. And it makes me think about the work-life balance when guys are first starting, and then as you mature.
Sure.
What's your thoughts on how you have a successful marriage, have a good work-life balance?
Yeah. So take it from me. I'm someone who did not have a good work-life balance. The first firm I was at, I worked my ass off at that firm. Can I say ass?
Yeah, sure.
I worked my butt off at that firm. All right. And I made partner there. It's like the youngest person ever made partner. I think I worked there for 9 years. I think I took 3 weeks off of vacation in 9 years. Every month I cared about being the highest, most productive attorney on the list, and they would publish a list and put it on everybody's desk of, here's who billed the most hours, here's who accomplished this. And that firm did not have an incentivization system. So it didn't matter. But this is the way that I differentiated myself.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I took it very personally, and I said, look, I'm a hard worker and my work ethic. So look, there is a place for that, right? And, during that time period, I tried 1,000 cases, literally, 1,000 cases in develop my skill set. So that was the time and the minds that you had to spend, to develop the skills, and that's fine. And there is some point of that. But nowadays, I think that's kind of a terrible idea. I told people in my old firm, they kind of threw me in an office and said, here's a bunch of cases, try them, don't try them, figure it out.
Yeah.
What a terrible way to learn, because it took me like 5 years to become truly competent at what I was doing and a master of it.
Yeah.
So now I tell people, like,
having the mentor.
I say, if you come here in 90 days, like, we're going to give you all of that stuff. We're going to accelerate your life. And the first couple of months, it's tough in any job, right? And so, but I want to focus people on work-life balance, like right from the very first day. First day I start saying, think about when are you going to take your vacations, put your PTO time in. You're not a professional if you're out of control. Yeah. If you're spinning out of control and stressed out all the time and overwhelmed, you're not a professional. You are not. You are, and you're stressing everybody else out. Like, that's not, so you have to have a culture that says, internally, my firm, I say, look, I want to be home at night, 5:30 for dinner. Yeah. I want to go to all my son's baseball games. I want to go to all my daughter's plays and tennis games. My other daughter runs. I'm like, I want you guys out of here. Yeah. We shut off our computer system on Friday night, 5:30, kick everybody out of the company. Out, you're out, go. Yeah. We try to do these things because you care about it.
Yeah. I'm going to force you guys to get back out.
Yeah. You have to. You have to unplug and get away from it.
But I wish someone that's burnt out, distractions, chaos going on in the marriages or in their out of work life, it's going to distract you. You're not going to be effective.
100%.
Yeah.
And you're gonna ruin everybody else's fun.
Yeah.
Too. So there's all those things, and we have like rules, and we say things like you're not allowed to call your paraprofessional before or after work hours.
Wow.
Because people get in that habit. They start treating their paraprofessional as like,
off. You're going through your
do
emails.
this, handle this tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like, no.
Yeah. Texting.
Give people boundaries and be clear about it. Right.
Yeah.
When I hire, attorneys want to make all this money, and they said, I can bill this many hours. And they said, nope. In your first year, we're going to set you at 1,900 hours. We're going to give you 100 hours of credit just for coming to CLEs, because you can't do that. I think it's very negative to incentivize attorneys around billable goals.
Yeah.
Because A, on one hand, you're encouraging them to steal and to do shallow work and do fast work.
Yeah.
But B, this is like not good for them long term.
Yeah.
And then ultimately, when what we prize is creativity and passion or advocacy, who cares who bills the most? AI is going to do all the homework. That's not really, I think, a thing that's going to be long term valuable.
Yeah.
But we do it. We do try to incentivize people who want to be more productive, because I think the other side of work-life balance is, I want you to have a nice life.
Yeah.
I want you to have a nice work life.
Yeah.
And I want you to control how much money you make.
Yeah.
So I try to put as much of that control in people's hands as I possibly can. Because, there are people, in my firm, in 4 quarters, so we pay bonuses quarterly.
Yeah.
And we pay bonuses based on what people bill, not what we collect. So
Okay.
it's truly under their control.
Wow.
And about
So that's abnormal, right?
half the attorneys, absolutely.
Yeah.
Nobody else does that. About half the attorneys overproduce
Yeah.
every quarter.
Uh-huh.
But it's not the same
Yeah.
ones. Because some people, like at Christmas time, they're like, you know what, I'm laying back, I'm taking my vacation.
Right.
So my January bonus is going to be less because I'm doing that. Great. That shows me that they're choosing how they're going to, how much effort they're going to put in.
Good.
And how much, time they're going to spend on vacation with families, and how much time they're going to spend at work.
Right.
But, me as the owner of the business, I think the owner's always going to be very skewed, right? Because, I certainly sacrificed a lot of time and family time.
Yes.
For my career. Looking back,
Now,
I wish I didn't do
Is that a
that.
team approach? You and your wife talked
Oh yeah,
about
100%.
it? Hey,
She's
good communication there. Like, honey, this is going to be a grind here. We got the J curve. We're going to be spending some time at the office. I got trials coming up, and
No, she took it. She was very supportive. She dated me at the end of law school, so she knew I was very driven.
Yeah.
And I have a chip on my shoulder, and I wanted to be the biggest and the best trial attorney I could be, and all those things. So she was never confused about what direction we were heading in.
Yeah.
But the last 10 years have been sort of a gentle disengagement from the company.
Yeah.
And then starting to say, hey, look, this is not my whole identity.
Good
this
for
is
you.
just a thing
Yeah.
that we're doing right now.
Yeah.
But the parts of it that I would say is like be thoughtful of how much you're willing to sacrifice. I feel like I did sacrifice a lot of my health for my business. My wife, we used to run marathons together. In fact, I proposed to her at the New York City half marathon at the finish line. Yeah.
Get the heck out.
And I've done Chicago Marathon, I've done New York, and did those things with her. And then I got so embroiled in my business, running completely fell off. And I wish that some of that time that I didn't spend on myself, I did. A lot of sacrificing. Before COVID, when I was doing a lot of selling, I was on the road. I was staying in hotels 100 nights a year. It's really tough to be healthy when you're whining and dining clients, when you're flying around, you're not controlling, you're eating at restaurants. All that time. That was tough. So, I would tell you that I didn't make always the best decisions for my personal. There's a lot of sacrifice that goes along with it. Yeah. And, some of the young attorneys
learning, right?
They say like, hey, I want to go on sales trips, Greg. I want to market. And I'm like, do you really? Have you really thought about what that means? It's not fun. It's time away from your family, and it's not always making the best choices. So, those are some things that I would think about in terms of that work-life balance.
Yeah. I got to readdress that with my boys in the practice with me. And really get back on track with making sure they understand the life outside of work, because we talk so much about work all the time, and we love it. But great point, Greg. I need to readdress that, because I got out of balance too. You know what I mean? And when I say out of balance, great communication with the wife, but the priorities of maybe even the spiritual life, the health, the time that just kept slipping away, right? And even doing activities you enjoyed doing, it was like work, grow. So appreciate that. That's really good. Well said. Man, anything else we've not covered that you're like, here's some wisdom I'd love to impart to?
I don't have wisdom. No, I'm a cautionary tale. But that's one thing I would say I picked up from C12. And really, I guess from the biblical perspective in general, I've been dwelling on this. I'm going to share this one with you.
Okay.
It seems like in the Bible, there's exactly two kinds of stories. Be like this, successful, or cautionary tale.
Yeah.
But my takeaway from it is God always wins. Because he always gets either like this glittering disaster that he can point to and say, don't do this. Or this great virtue paragon, great, parable to share with people. So I was thinking about, as we go through all our transitions, like which one am I becoming? Am I this like, don't do this, which story, are we sort of transforming into, and how are we representing God to the people we work with?
So good. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are in beautiful Dallas, Texas. Actually, it's South Lake, right? South Lake. And we just want you to let us do what Greg's done. Let us come to your town and run with you, hear your story, especially, obviously, if you're a Christian business owner, because we're not going to come if you're not. And we'd love to run with you. Please like and subscribe. And especially if you have a challenge in your business, we're talking choke points every single time we're out here. So tell us what your choke point is. Tell us how we can help you and your business get to the next level. Thanks so much for watching. Hey guys, if you watch my content, you probably own a business, and I would love to one-on-one with you. I'd love to talk with you about the things I always talk about. 3 things. What would have to be true to 10x your business? What can be done to make your business easier to run? And what can be done to reduce risk in your business? I'd love to talk about those things with you. If you want to just click, there's in the description below, there should be a link to a Calendly. You could set up a free one-on-one with me. Love to spend some time on the phone with you, just talking through your story. Maybe obviously my ulterior motive is to get you to come onto the podcast, but I don't mind if you don't want to get onto a podcast. I'd love to just have a one-on-one with you if I can give you some help. So if you're a Christian business owner, any size business, any type of business, I'd love to help you. So go ahead and click the link below, get onto a Calendly so you and I can have a talk. I'd love to help you if I can. I love your help with my business if you have some advice for me. So thanks so much for watching. Thank you for being a part of our community.